continents, President of CII, Mr. Sanjeev Bajaj, my good friend, Chairman of DP World, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulaim, all the captains of industry who have assembled here from across the world for this very important Partnership Summit 2023, heads of mission from different countries who have joined us, friends from the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, today is a very special day for India. While we are at the inaugural of the Partnership Summit 2023, and truly a phenomenal inauguration. I don't think I've seen such a program in a long time at the Taj Palace. Such a distinguished gathering of world leaders on stage through video conferencing. So many delegations from across the world. Truly testimony to CII's and Chandrajit, your personal goodwill across the world. I say we are a proud nation today, having won 2 Oscars for the first time ever. The first, of course, was the news of the Elephant Whisperers, which highlights sustainable development and harmony with nature. But the good part is, it also gives us a sense of women empowerment in India, with both the director and producer. The director and producer are both women of eminence. But we have another woman amongst us here today, Shobna Khomeini. Shobna is the proud mother-in-law of Natu's actor Mr. Ramcharan Upasana. And my compliments to the entire cast of Natu for being selected the best original song. The entire RRR cast, whether it's her son-in-law Ramcharan, whether it's the screenwriter Mr. V.V. Prasad, who's now a member of the Rajya Sabha with me, nominated by Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, Junior NTR, Raja Mauli, the entire team deserves the highest accolades. And may I suggest we play a small clip of the song?
పోట్ల గిత్త దూకినట్టు పొలేరమ్మ జాతరలో పోతరాజు ఊగినట్టు కిర్రు సెప్పులేసుకొని కర్ర సాము చేసినట్టు మర్రి సొట్టు నీడలోన కుర్ర గుంపు కూడినట్టు ఎర్ర జొన్న రొట్టెలోన మిరప దొక్కు గలిపినట్టు నా పాట చూడు నా పాట చూడు నా పాట చూడు నాటు 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 తీర నాటు 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 కూర నాటు 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 పచ్చి మిరపలాగా
I think they deserve a standing ovation. Let's give them a standing ovation. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's the common thread between all of us present here today. And I was just looking around the stage, and with each of my colleagues here, I feel a personal connect, whether as an individual or as an Indian. We have 2 of our distinguished members of the ASEAN grouping with whom we had developed a free trading agreement many years ago. We have Singapore and Indonesia here, and we had Korea, with whom also we had executed one of our earlier free trade agreements on the screen. We have the UAE, with whom we recently concluded the world's fastest negotiated free trade agreement and comprehensive economic partnership. 88 days, start to finish. And His Excellency, my good friend and brother Abdullah, was here to execute it with me in May of 2022. And truly, it was in February of 2022. And the fastest ever coming into effect happened with that agreement on 1st of May. It came into effect within 2 months of signing. And I have with us here Mr. Kalicharan, Excellency Minister Kalicharan, with whom I had the privilege to do my first comprehensive economic partnership. The first that I did as Commerce Minister a year and a half ago. We have with us Mr. Loknath Sharma, a very, very valued neighbor, somebody with whom I have a very deep personal connect for several years, and who represents probably the only country, or the country which is the symbol of happiness when he comes from Bhutan over here. I had the privilege to share notes with His Excellency, the Minister from Cuba, only yesterday. And we discussed at length the long relations that we have had between Cuba and India. I think many of us, a little older generation, will remember pictures of their leader and our earlier prime ministers together, reflecting the deep spirit of cooperation and friendship between our two countries. And with Canada, Mary Angie was in England or in London. It's very appropriate because we are negotiating comprehensive economic arrangements and partnerships with both Canada and the United Kingdom, where she is right now. So lots of action all across the world, but the common thread in all of this is trust, friendship, and partnership. And I think that is what we have all assembled here today to celebrate our friendship, to celebrate our togetherness, to celebrate the trust and the connect that we feel with each one of you, and leading in the future, I think, to greater economic partnerships, greater geopolitical relationships, and certainly earning the trust of our businesses, our people, is uppermost in our mind when we work with all our friendly countries. It's a very appropriate time to have this partnership summit. We have the G20 presidency this year. The G20 presidency is focusing on 5 themes which Chandrajit articulated. The concept of race, which has been taken up as the theme of the partnership summit. And clearly, this is the time to leverage friendships and partnerships to solve the many, many problems that the world is facing today. These are tough times, undoubtedly. The world had barely come out of COVID when we were confronted with a conflict which took economies down, which raised inflation and consequently interest rates, which brought deep recession in many parts of the world. And in these tough times, I think a meeting like this helps us all to see how we can get the best for each one of us and for our people through collective solutions to global challenges and global problems. Therefore, the 10 tracks that have been taken up for discussion at this summit are also very deeply aligned with our Business 20 agenda. I will talk about the 10 tracks in a moment, but clearly, in this fractured world, where global value chains are disrupted, we are all looking for friends, friendshoring, nearshoring. We are all looking to find outcomes to the various challenges that each of our country or region is facing. And we are looking for resilient, distributed, and stable sources of growth, supply chains. We are seeking greater market access with minimizing the exposure to risk that many of our economies are facing. As the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi said, and I quote, "It is only partnerships that will get us to our goals." Partnerships between citizens, communities, and countries. It is the 3 C's, citizens, communities, and countries, when working together in the spirit of cooperation, collaboration, and sometimes competition. When the 3 C's meet these 3 C's, I think collectively we can look at a more stable and a more prosperous future for the people of all our countries. Friends, if you look at India's partnerships, the 5 themes: responsible. We were a responsible global citizen when we developed the COVID vaccines, not only for our own citizens, who were administered 2.2 billion vaccines free of charge, all made in India, indigenous vaccines. But we also provided vaccines to the less developed countries, to the Pacific Island nations, to Caribbean nations, to small island states, to our neighbors. Over 250 million vaccines were provided, most of them free of charge, to other parts of the world. When we talk of accelerated partnerships, look at how we worked with UAE. I just spoke about the 88-day FTA, or the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. With Australia, it was a similar story. While we launched in September of 2021, we lost the first quarter, 3-4 months, due to COVID there and then COVID here, Christmas, New Year. Effectively, we launched the Australia negotiation on 4th of January via video conferencing. And we executed that agreement on 2nd April. With February thrown in, that's probably faster from start to finish with 85 days. That's accelerated relationship building that I would urge other countries and other economies to follow, and that I would urge businesses from all the various partner countries to look at the speed of action, because that is the need of the hour. Innovative. We just executed a very robust agreement with the United States of America to work together on the semiconductor ecosystem. This is the day and age of innovation. All of us will have to look at innovative ideas, new ways of doing our work more efficiently, more effectively. Our startup ecosystem reflects that innovative spirit. A country which barely had 3 or 4 unicorns 7 years ago, today has over 100 unicorns. And India's startup ecosystem today is the 3rd largest in the world. and we hope to grow significantly in the years to come. Similarly, sustainability has been at the core of the G20 agenda for several years now, the core of all multilateral and bilateral engagements over the last few years. But for us in India, sustainability is a way of life. It's not something that we need to be taught or to learn from other parts of the world. Sustainability in India may go back thousands of years. In fact, for most Indians, we respect and often even pray even to the mountains and rivers, to the biodiversity, to trees, to animals. We hold every element of nature in high reverence. And therefore, when Vice President Al Gore came out with his now famous book, The Inconvenient Truth, about 15 or 20 years ago, soon thereafter, Prime Minister Modi came out with his own response, Convenient Action. And that is the way India treats this subject. We believe in action. We believe in outcomes. In Paris, Prime Minister Modi played the leadership role of bringing the developed world and the developing countries together on one platform. And I don't think without his leadership, Paris at the COP21 would have seen such robust outcomes. And I remember Prime Minister Modi also launched the International Solar Alliance at Paris during that visit. Also, India set very ambitious goals during COP21, one amongst which was to be 40% of our installed capacity as renewable energy. I'm happy to share with you, friends, that by 2021, 9 years ahead of schedule, 9 years before 2030, India has already exceeded 40% of our installed capacity being clean energy. Of course, we did not know when we were moving at a fast pace to achieve that when you cross one mountain, you only find that there are many more mountains to cross ahead. Prime Minister Modi has already changed the target for 2030 from 175 gigawatt, which is already achieved, to 500 gigawatt by 2030. When we talk of equitable, I think we are all aligned in our effort to see inclusive growth. At the World Trade Organization's 12th ministerial earlier or middle of last year, I think the collective theme was that we need to see inclusive growth. We need to be more inclusive in our thinking, in our actions, in our agreements. And therefore, I think an equitable world is what India aims for when we bring in the concept of race as our theme for the G20. It is imperative our partnerships are future ready. It is important that we build resilience in our economies. We enforce sustainability, yet respect and focus on inclusivity. Our green goals are very ambitious. The Panch Amrit that Prime Minister Modi had articulated in Glasgow at COP26 reflected India's commitment to a sustainable future to be a responsible global citizen in the collective fight to address the challenge of climate change. Prime Minister Modi introduced the concept of life, that is sustainable lifestyles, which is the need of the hour, because the waste that we are all generating across the world, more particularly in the developed world, is a larger cause of this big problem of climate change than the needs of humanity. After all, India has only contributed about 2.25% of the problem that we see up there in the ozone layer, despite supporting 16% of the world population. We are not the reason for the problem in the first place, because Indians grew up respecting an efficient and sustainable use of the resources at our command. The other day I was sharing with some friends on a public platform that in our young days, if we ever left our room without switching off the light or the fan, I don't think many of us had air conditioners at that time. And if our mother ever saw that, I think we would get a spank straight away. It's another matter that nowadays I think you can't spank any children anymore. But I don't regret that. I think she taught me the lessons of life that I think we need to pass on to our children without spanking them though. But I assure you, our children respect and understand nature better than our generation did. And as Mahatma Gandhi had said, we in this generation are all trustees and have inherited the earth as custodians for our children. And it's incumbent on all of us to leave behind a better world than the one we inherited, so that our children get a better future. And therefore, we in India are committed to our sustainable goals. We in India are committed to sustainable lifestyle. We are committed to the circular economy. We are committed to eliminating waste or reuse and recycling our waste. And I invite all our partner countries to work with India, to learn from India, to partner India in this effort to make the world a better place to live in. In fact, only a couple of days back, the former United Nations Environment Head, Eric Solheim, said, and I quote, "The West has a lot to learn from Modi, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, on economic and green policies." Friends, under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, India has embarked on a massive reform journey, a journey of transformation that will completely change the future of India. We are already the 5th largest economy in the world. We were 10th largest barely a decade ago, aspiring to become the 3rd largest in the next maybe 4 or 5 years. We are entering into international agreements with several countries to enable our businesses, as we will enable businesses around the world to engage deeply with each other, so that we can become a larger player on the international global economic front. And I'm happy to share with you that this effort has been led by Prime Minister Modi literally from the front line. I remember for a long period, our exports of goods and services were hovering around $500 billion a year. 2 years ago, if I remember correctly, the 2021, our exports of goods and services collectively were $500 billion. Prime Minister Modi decided that India will convert the crisis of COVID into an opportunity. We will not be deterred by the crisis. We will not be shying away from the challenges before the nation. He talked to all the export promotion councils in the country, heard them, understood the challenges they were facing, and there were many at that point of time. He interacted with over 180 heads of mission across the world. Over 180 heads of mission interacted with Prime Minister Modi. And he tasked them with 3 T's. He said, you will all be expected to, and your performance will be calibrated, will be judged, or as my good friend Abdullah was just sharing, your KPIs will be trade, technology, and tourism. And I must compliment both our mission heads and all the exporters of goods and services from India who expanded the engagement, our international trade, our exports rapidly, so that last year we grew from 500 billion to 676 billion, a massive jump, an all-time record for India. And we are inching close in this 75th year of independence as we celebrate Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, that's 75 years of an independent India. 2022-23, current year, which will end on 31st March. In our 75th year, India is marching ahead to cross $750 billion of exports of goods and services. India today offers many competitive and comparative advantages over other competing economies. We are focusing both on high quality of goods as well as leveraging economies of scale, particularly given the large domestic market that we offer to businesses and investors who come and work in India, and to our friends in their economic engagement with India. In fact, Sultan Bhai is setting up large facilities in Jammu Kashmir, where he is picking up significant investments, reflecting the emergence of peace and stability in Jammu Kashmir. Our businesses are moving fast towards adopting AI, IoT, good manufacturing practices, and modern ways of doing business. 5G is being rolled out at a rapid pace since 1st October, expected to be across the country in another year or so. Our MSMEs are fast engaging with digitalization, and as was mentioned earlier, India is offering its digital prowess in the form of public goods, digital public goods for the use of the rest of the world. Singapore and India have recently partnered on UPI, and we hope to do the same with UAE in the near future. We are expanding rupee trade with several countries, many of which are at an advanced stage of dialogue and finalization. Friends, the 10 tracks that have been proposed by CII for this partnership summit give us a lot of food for thought. And if I may venture to make 10 recommendations on those 10 tracks. When we talk of building inclusive and resilient global value chains, we must all collectively address the challenges of tariffs and non-tariff barriers. There are so many non-tariff barriers, and as countries create these non-tariff barriers, others are tempted to follow suit. And as Mahatma Gandhi had said, an eye for an eye will make the whole world blind. It will be imperative that nations look at addressing non-tariff barriers in a mission mode. Number two, when we talk of financing global economic recovery, I think a strong and responsive international institutional framework is called for, and within which we need to also reform several multilateral organizations and trading arrangements that have over the years led some non-transparent economies whose economic systems are totally opaque to enjoy the fruits of multilateral engagement. I think it's time the world called out such countries and made them accountable and transparent. Number three, at the G20 platform, India has offered Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is one family, as our theme. One earth, one family, one future. And that's truly what the world needs today. More friendships, more partnerships, working together for collective global good. Number four, when we talk of emerging technologies, it's important that we do a world skill mapping. And on the one hand, we'll find certain nations with tremendous skills. We can match that with the skill deficit, yet rich countries which need those skills. And that matchmaking is what partnerships are all about. Singapore and India are making a serious effort to do that matchmaking. UAE and India have been doing that for several decades now. Mauritius and India have been doing that for centuries now. And it's possible. And I invite other countries so that workforce scarce countries can enjoy the fruits of matching skill-rich countries like India, and both will stand to benefit. With Australia, we are working on such mobility and migration partnerships. Fifth, on energy, climate change, and resource efficiency, we all have to collectively look for ways to fund the low-income countries and the developing nations to help everybody address the climate change challenge. The polluter pay principle was accepted by all in Paris. In fact, there's a 15-year-old commitment that the developed world, which has enjoyed low-cost energy, which has caused most of the problem, over 50% of the problem, the pollution, the depletion of the ozone layer, the challenge of climate change, comes from the developed world, despite they are supporting probably less than 15-17% of the world population. It was collectively agreed that trillions of dollars will be required to make the world a safer place to live in. Low cost, long tenor, grant-based funding and technology is the need of the hour. And I call upon the developed nations to provide the promised resources to enable the world to adopt clean energy goals, net zero goals faster. Number 6, when we talk of financial inclusion, we believe we must see greater participation of our MSMEs, our women entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs from the less developed countries, and it is incumbent on all of us to support these sections of society and these countries to play a greater role and help them in their growth and development. Number 8, when we talk of technology and innovation, I think collaboration is the way forward. Joint research amongst countries who have the skill set and countries who have the spirit of inquiry, the inquisitiveness, the innovative spirit, can work together to find solutions to the challenges before the world. Number 9, we need to promote flexible ESG frameworks. An ESG framework cannot have a one-size-fits-all structure. It will have to be dependent on economies, population, levels of development, and we need to come together and impress upon the developed world that ESG frameworks will have to be tailor-made and more flexible so that they can take care of the marginalized sections of society and the world and give them a chance to grow and improve lifestyles in their countries. Finally, the African economic integration calls for greater trade and greater development initiatives in the African continent. And I think we are all collectively committed to the development of the African nations and greater prosperity for the people of Africa. Friends, effectively, great partnerships are all about 5 T's: trust, talent, trade, technology, and tradition. In these 10 elements, you will find the 5 T's are reflected in abundance. I am confident this partnership summit will help in building new bridges to foster balanced and equitable global growth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of the Partnership Summit. Thank you, Honorable Minister Shri Goyal. Thanks for a great start with your multi-dimensional inputs and thoughts, which will, I'm sure, define the discussions over the next 2 days. Thanks for defining race so very effectively and giving us your inputs on the 10 tracks plus the 5 T's. One can go on, but thank you very much for giving us this track. We know your diary will be extremely chaotic tomorrow and day after, with many of the people present in this hall who would be actually meeting you on a one-to-one. Thank you, Honorable Minister. Thanks to the ministers from UAE, Minister from Singapore, Minister from Mauritius, Minister from Korea who was on the screen, Minister from Indonesia, Minister from Cuba, Minister from Bhutan, Minister from Canada, who was also with us from the UK, and of course both Mr. Sanjeev Bajaj, the chairman the co-chairman of the Partnership Summit and president of CII, and of course the chairman of the DP World, plus many ministers who will be participating tomorrow and day after, all the excellencies, very distinguished delegates from India and overseas. Thank you very much for participating in this inaugural session. Ladies and gentlemen, before I request you to join the dinner which will be hosted by the Honorable Minister and the Chairman of the Partnership Summit, I'll request our Honorable Minister to give a very unique gift to each one of our participants, which comes from the districts of India. May I request our Honorable Minister to give away the gifts?
To encourage artisans and preserve the Indian heritage. We have our minister handing over these gifts to all our guest ministers today.